Hello and welcome to the This Works For Me Virtual Summit. I'm your host, Firmpit Watson. I am the Director of the Faculty Development Center at Murray State University. Are you looking for strategies to help you integrate technology effectively in your courses? Well, our guest today, Dr. Debra Ferdinand-James, will be providing you with some strategies to do so. Dr. Ferdinand-James, welcome.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
And thank you for being with us today. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
I am Debra Ferdinand-James. I am an educational technologist at the School of Education, the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine Campus, Trinidad. And I teach both undergraduate and graduate students technology-related courses. I've been here for the past 8 years. This year will be 9 years that I'm functioning as a facilitator in our teacher education programs, offered in a blended mode. That means that the sessions or the courses are sometimes taught online or face-to-face. I have research interests in blended learning, online learning, and workforce education and development.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, the theme of our conversation today is integrating technology to enhance learning using the Bloom's digital taxonomy. Now, for those of us who do not know what the Bloom's digital taxonomy is, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to ask you to walk us through what the taxonomy is and how you have used it.
So many of us are familiar, I think, with the traditional Bloom's taxonomy. It's our best friend in terms of using it to set our learning objectives. On the screen, we have the Bloom's digital taxonomy, which is the complementary to the traditional taxonomy, which has been revised. So to the left of our screen, we have 6 different levels of verbs that represent the traditional taxonomy. And you have verbs at the lower level from remembering, and you move right up to the higher order verbs such as creating, meaning that these verbs would require higher order thinking. In the Bloom digital taxonomy, which is the complementary verbs to the right of the screen in the boxes. So for example, if you're at the lower level of the taxonomy, such as remembering, you would be developing the lower order thinking skills like recognizing, listing, describing, identifying. In the Bloom's digital taxonomy, the equivalent to those skills or higher, lower order thinking skills, when you are integrating technology, they now would be things like bullet pointing, highlighting, bookmarking, because the technology allows you to develop these digital skills. I have used the Bloom's digital taxonomy in teaching my students how to integrate technology effectively. I have found in integrating technology, students tend, being digital natives, you know, they are in the 21st century that's driven by technology. So it's just a natural progression that technology will be integrated into teaching. But what I have found is that students focus more on using the features of the tools, the technology tools. So be it animation, or if you're putting in sound or graphics or text or transitions, in whatever technology you're using to develop an instructional material, or if you are just using media, such as video or podcasts to integrate into your lesson. I have found that students focus more on the features, learning the features of the tools. And so they go to great pains to get the right animation, get the right background, graphics. And so at the end of the day, what you find is that the pedagogy or the teaching part that complements that integration of the technology is lost almost, I would say. And so I use this taxonomy to help students to focus first on the pedagogy before the technology. So you look at what is your lesson objective? Where does it fall on the taxonomy? Is it at the lower end, which most likely would be probably at the early part in your course, or at the lower end where you are in the middle of the course, and so you probably have students by that time applying skills and evaluating and creating and to the end. So I try to focus them on the pedagogy by matching whatever the lesson objective is to the digital taxonomy, those digital verbs, and so they'll get an idea of the type of technology that they can integrate into their lesson. So for example, for novice teachers who are now learning the technology integration skills, it's not difficult. If you are at the lower level of the taxonomy, for example, at the remembering level, and you're using bullet pointing and highlighting, you can choose technologies, software such as the PowerPoint or Word for those lower level digital verbs. And if you go up to the higher level or the thinking skills, you have verbs like equivalent to critiquing, you have blog commenting, so you can use a discussion forum there. Or if you are at the creating level where you have podcasting, you can use the software, whatever software for students to create a podcast. But it has to align your content and whatever you are preparing the technology for. It has to align with your learning objective, your learning outcome. Yeah.
Okay, great. So help me understand, how do students respond to your use of this strategy in terms of teaching them how to integrate the technology? Are you seeing a difference in their learning or their approach to their learning activities?
Definitely. Before, when we would get into the technology integration, I have found that they have created instructional materials or media pieces that would drive instructional content. And so you'd have students creating like a podcast or a video where it drives the content, the instructional content. When I use the Bloom's digital taxonomy, and I emphasize that, I engage them first before we start learning the different tools. And I indicate to them, look, this is the possibility here. If you are at this level of the taxonomy, look at some of the skills you can develop in students using technology. And so I have found students are now integrating technology pieces or media pieces that allow students to not only be stimulated by all the animation and sound and graphics, that's fine, because we want stimulation, but students are actually interacting with the technology that they're integrating. So you find that they're using online quizzes or gamification, or they're using web quests. Those are some of the pieces I'm seeing, or a Padlet, which is an electronic wall that students could go up on and post up their comments for other students to critique. So they are developing the 21st century skills in students. As you can see to the right of the taxonomy here, the Bloom's digital taxonomy, you have the wide spectrum of communications, and they include those 21st century skills that students need to develop to prepare for the 21st century workplace. So you have collaborating, if they are doing blogging, that's a form of collaborating. A lot of commenting and networking. Emailing, that's a lower level, but it is still using technology. You are posting and blogging. All of those allow students to develop 21st century skills for the 21st century workplace that is driven by technology.
Great, thanks. So similar to how we have the Bloom progressing from the lower level of remembering all the way to creating, we now have this communication spectrum from texting all the way up to collaborating.
Sure, yes.
So can someone choose their own verbs, bring in other things into the spectrum when
Sure,
deciding to integrate technology?
sure. You can use digital verbs that are here,
Mhm.
or you can use the technology that is aligned to the digital verb that you're using, so
Okay.
that you're not restricted to only these
Right.
digital verbs. But certainly,
Mhm.
this is a start.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying that. So I see that you have had good success in helping your students to use the Bloom's digital taxonomy. How has it informed your teaching? Have you used it in your course planning?
Sure. So, for example, I am in higher education, and I teach the novice teachers as well, in-service teachers, as well as teachers who at the graduate level who have some experience. But what I found is most times students are not familiar with the taxonomy.
Mhm.
And I try very much to, when I'm planning, to integrate it into my learning activities. So students, I can model for students what what is expected in using the taxonomy. So, for example, one of the higher order thinking skills that you have to develop in students at this level would be critiquing skills, critical thinking skills. So
Mhm.
I go to the taxonomy, I see that that is at the evaluating level, at the higher level.
Mhm.
And I have things like, blog commenting or collaborating as the digital verbs there.
Mhm.
So I can use a digital verb such as collaborating or blog commenting and set up a debate online where students use discussion forums to debate a topic related to the course. And so it's very much aligned to what I want to achieve in terms of the learning outcome. And I'm integrating the technology, and I'm sure that I am at the higher level of the taxonomy. So it helps you to align your technology integration well with your learning objective, and there you have it. It's really a good match.
Mhm. So it is a useful tool. And I wonder if there are any challenges associated with using this strategy, either for yourself or in teaching your students how to integrate technology.
The strategy is easy to adopt. I think what you may find, because when you are integrating technology, as I do when I teach the students to do it, it's taught in a lab because the students have to use the software on the computer to develop their different media pieces. The challenge is because it's in a lab and the computer screen is there, the desktop is there, it's very hard to compete with that screen. So what I do is I engage them first, because from the time you start demonstrating the tool and they get the hang of how the tool works, that's it. They go off and they try the different features and so on. So the challenge you have is to compete with that computer screen, because they don't look at you anymore, they look at the screen. So what I try to do when I upload the learning materials for the session, I try to have information in there that is related to the session, but not all of the information is there. So for example, the PowerPoint or whatever materials I put up there, I would not include the answers to questions I'll be asking in the session.
Mm.
So the question would be there, but the answers would not be there. I would later on put up a different version with the answer for them later on. But initially in the session, I would not do that. So they have to think. And before I start demonstrating the technology tool to them, what I would do is engage them in their feedback as to where in the lesson are you, what is your lesson objective? Where in the lesson you plan to integrate technology? Is it in the beginning to just gain attention, which means it would mean it's just a short piece? Are you putting it in the middle of the lesson for reinforcement or practice, which means it would be a more elaborative piece with more content? Or are you using it in assessment, as a formative assessment or a summative assessment, which means then that your questions, if you're using a quiz, most times that is one technology that you can use there. You have to ensure that your questions are at the level of your learning objective.
Great. That's an excellent answer. Now, for those of us who resonate with what you have shared today, but we might be a little bit hesitant to use this Bloom's digital taxonomy, what are some first steps that we could take?
Sure. So first you have to identify what the learning objective would be. And if you are a teacher educator and you are teaching, teachers to use their digital taxonomy, you would then have them match whatever their learning objective is to the digital verb so that they can understand the type of digital skills that students would be developing at that level with the integration of technology. And then it will give them an idea of what type of software they can use to develop those skills. And at the same time, whatever you are developing, it must fit into where it has been integrated in the lesson. So they have to determine whatever framework they're using, be it the Gagne 9 events of instruction or the ADDIE approach. You have different, or the technology integration planning model, whatever framework you're using, the teachers have to understand where you're putting this media piece or integrating the technology within the lesson. And once you have those three components figured out, then you can proceed to start developing the actual media that you're going to be integrating into the lesson.
Great. And I know that you mentioned that you would share some resources with our viewers. Would you like to tell us what those are?
Sure. Andrew Churches, who actually worked and developed the Bloom's digital taxonomy, he has a very comprehensive document on the establishment and development of the digital taxonomy and how it can be used with examples for integration into lessons, different lessons, different subject areas. So I would most certainly share those with you. He has a PDF in addition to a video.
Viewers, I would encourage you to check out the resources below and share this conversation with others. So Dr. Ferdinand-James, thank you very much for taking the time to share with us today.
You're most welcome.
And to our viewers, we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of this virtual summit. See you soon.